In this video, I want to talk a little bit about the advantages of a hand crank. Now, my camera format has changed in that I'm using a phone now, but it's kind of working out okay. I'm getting used to the phone. I don't really have a stand for it that takes a good view. But in the picture here, you see my 1937 Singer 1588. Now, this machine was originally marketed as probably either a hand crank, but more probably as a treadle. This is a treadle head. And I picked it up as a spare, but also to go into a treadle top that I had put together out of spare treadle pieces. So it's been a machine in my treadle for the past couple of years. But I want to talk about, right now I have it set up as a hand crank because I have one of my model 237s in the treadle. But I want to talk about the advantages of using a hand crank. Now obviously there's no motor on the back. There's no electricity needed. The antique Singers are wonderful for this. And they take all the low shank vintage Singer attachments. I have a zigzagger on there right now. And all of those attachments are heavy duty, built to last metal attachments. They're not like the modern snap-on feet on electric machines. The modern snap-on feet are convenient for changing, just snapping them on and snapping them off. But most of them that I've bought or come across are plastic. And so the fact that these old machines are all metal gears, the attachments are metal, you just cannot go wrong with a machine like this. It's never going to break. The most you can do is forget to oil it and it'll squeak. When I first got this one, it sounded like a train. And after just an afternoon of oiling, it was running fine. Now, this is a hand crank unit on here, and I have the zigzagger on right now, so I'll just do... Now, the biggest thing you have to get used to is not having two hands to guide the fabric. Now that's making a zigzag pattern. That's 3 layers of a quilt block, flannel, cotton, and cotton. And it's just sewing it. It's just doing it. This machine is also one that I found worked wonderfully when I was putting together a sweater quilt. And that was very thick and very bulky with very thick seam allowances that I had to sew. So the advantages to this type of machine are kind of obvious as far as they can do anything, they can handle anything. The Model 15s have a slightly higher clearance than some of the other vintage Singers under the presser foot, so you can get a little bit more fabric under there. They don't have reverse. This is the stitch length lever. And, I'm sorry, this one does have reverse. I'm thinking of my 9913 doesn't have reverse. This has reverse. And the ones, if you get them really early, this is 1937. My 9913 is 1934, and all it has is a circular knob here that you turn to change the stitch length, and it doesn't have reverse. This one does have reverse. And this is 1937. But if you'll see, my grandmother used to keep the 9913 on her kitchen table. Now, I'm doing a lot of different things right now. I have stuff everywhere. And yet, the machine itself is 14 inches long. I've got it in a base that adds another 2 inches. So I've got like 17 inches of space. And then the machine is about 7 inches deep and another 2 or 3 inches. So we've got 17 by maybe 9 inches. You can almost put it anywhere, and you don't need a plug, you don't need a foot pedal, you don't need a knee bar, you don't need anything but your arm. And I have sewn, when it comes to quilting, you use, obviously, your left hand if you're right-handed to guide the fabric. And as far as I know, all the machines are, well, they're always going to be right-handed, but I'm trying to think if there's any change if you were going to use it like backwards. I don't think so. You'd have to turn the machine around and use it backwards to use your left hand. And I'm sure you could get used to that. But you need to get your left hand, in this case, proficient at guiding fabric with just one hand. When you have a large twin size or larger quilt, you have a lot of fabric that might be shifting here. So you might feel like there's a little bit of juggling of fabric, but that's about the only drawback. Now I have this on a typing table, and if I were quilting a quilt right now, it would be feeding over the edge of the table and everything. And if you have that set up correctly, where the quilt is going to feed to the left correctly, then you're not going to have a lot of jiggling. So, I'm sorry, there's some kind of an alarm going off. I think it's outside and a car. There really isn't a disadvantage here, is what I'm getting to. It's not like the new machines with all bells and whistles, but with a zigzag attachment, there's also a blind stitch attachment, there's a sock darning frame or hoop. There are so many things that you can get for these that give you a wide variety of stitches, but with a very, very simple machine. The machine is not going to be the issue if you're using this type of a machine. You're not going to have, bobbins. With mine, with the 15s, bobbins don't get messed up. It's a vertical bobbin case. You have a simple bobbin winder right here. Everything is so mechanical that it almost can't go wrong, and your quilt and your work can get much more of your attention because the machine's not the issue. It just works. Now, anything from this age would have a spoked hand wheel on it if it was meant for a treadle. So all you would really have to buy, if you buy a treadle head, I paid about $35 or $40 for this machine, and it did have a spoked hand wheel on it, and then I had to buy a hand crank unit, which I use on different machines, but they're about between $15 and $20. But once you buy the hand crank, and once you have it like this, you don't ever have to buy anything else unless you decide to collect the vintage attachments. A general box of attachments comes with a zipper foot, a gathering foot, a hem stitcher, an edge stitcher, a hemmer foot. There are several in there that will do just about anything you want to do. So it's not only for the economy, the planet, not only to keep old machines in circulation. If there were a company today that would make these as well as these were made, I think they would be extremely popular because they're very simple and they're not complicated. They're also not electric. Now I have low light in the house, and I can move this anywhere without worrying about whether there's a plug anywhere. So I encourage people to look at the vintage singers, the whites that I have. As far as I know, there still isn't a reproduction hand crank for the whites. So the vintage singers, some PAFs, I think, have hand cranks available, but I'm not sure. You'd have to do some research. The old Singers as hand cranks are really the only machine somebody would need. I used to say that about the 237s because it's a basic zigzag machine, but the disadvantage is that you need to have a power source. And with these, you don't need a power source. They weigh about 30 pounds. The 99s, if you get a 99, you have to adapt it to a hand crank, and I do have videos up on how to do that. A 99 would weigh about 25 pounds. This weighs about 30 pounds. But it's not so heavy that I can't carry it around the house or move it around. My new brother weighs 12 pounds, but my new brother is all plastic and isn't going to last. This machine is from 1937, and it runs like it's brand new. And that is the point. Once you buy one, you're not going to have to buy another sewing machine. So, using vintage Singers as hand cranks is a plus.